Weird science
is the revolution.
Action Comics number 1062, written by Jason Aaron, with art by John Timms, Rex Locus, and Dave Sharp. We're continuing our City of Bizarro story, where in the last issue, this really just came out of nowhere and shocked the hell out of me how much I enjoyed Jason Aaron writing Superman, as well as we already know we like him on Batman Offworld. But jumping in here for a few issues, I'm like, oh, what's he going to pull here? And especially with the idea of Bizarro, which is always going to be a tough sell for a lot of people, but he is one of those big villains. It's just the idea of having a full City of Bizarro talk is such a pain. And Jason Aaron was able to pull a lot of this off in the previous issue by having Bizarro use a magic spell, because he's all magicked up in this. He's able to reverse his talk, so we can all understand. I'm like, you know what, Jason Aaron, I really appreciate that, because I don't want to listen to Bizarro talk the entire issue. And I say listen because I have to read out loud because I'm special like that. But here we are for the second issue, and the entire city of Metropolis has been taken over by Bizarros. Everybody's been infected, and the thing is, for a week, this takes place with weeks and weeks, it is spreading out of Metropolis and all over the world, it looks like. And it's weird, though, because Jason Aaron does seem to try to continue the idea of getting away of a full issue of Bizarro talk, but what we have instead is a city full of people acting like Bizarros, like doing the opposite of what they normally would do in whatever their profession or daily life. But the Bizarro talk is just kind of thrown out the window, besides for when Bizarro number 1 is talking to Superman in his head, or Bizarro Lois talking to Superman. It just really feels odd, because you want to read it as Bizarro talk, but it doesn't work that way for the story that Jason Aaron's telling.
Well,
and I'm like, magic.
It's weird. Well, it's weird because it doesn't fully, the guy at the beginning, hello, Mom, hello, he's Bizarro talk. This is the thing. I like the idea I love the idea of the magic spell that lets him talk normal. You almost get the fun of Bizarro, which, you can debate me on that, but you get the talk of the clone Bizarro that you like because you hate. And I like the idea of doing the opposite. Like, oh my God, but
he's
mix and match in here. There's still some people at points where they're yelling things and it just throws you off. You can't have a full story, because when you end up having a story that has Bizarro, but everybody else, then it can work, because obviously everybody else is there to combat that nonsense talk. But when you have everybody, you can't really tell things because of the idea of, I hate you. Oh, that means that they love him. But then it doesn't. And even Lois jumps in and out. It's weird.
You are trying to read this where the city just wants Bizarro number 1, but Superman is able to fight the infection that we saw at the end of the previous issue where he became Bizarro number 1. He fights off this, mystical infection that he has because he's Superman. That's how.
It just doesn't work for me.
And he continues to go on trying to stop everybody from killing themselves with all the rigmarole that they're doing in their daily lives, like firefighters actually starting fires, brain surgeons allowing their patients to give them brain surgery instead, and even the idea of people who are delivering babies trying to shove them back where they came.
Yeah, that's what you got, right? I was guessing that or butt. I'm like, are they shoving them up the butt? But I definitely went. When you ended up originally in this, I saw some people say, oh my God, are they eating the babies? And I'm like, no. They're shoving them right back up there. They are shoving them back. That's bad. Now, why
but
I
the thing
think
is,
also...
what I was getting to, though, was the idea, though, you're trying to go into the idea, this is Bizarro world. Okay, we're recreating a Bizarro world. So when we have all of these people talking, when Superman snaps out of and trying to save everybody, we hate you, Superman. Your brain immediately tries to go, oh my God, the people are still in there. They're trying to fight this whole thing because they're doing Bizarro talk, but the way it is, they're actually saying, please help us, Superman. We love you. Don't leave us alone and stuff like that. But as it goes on, you realize, no, that's not the case at all. So you just have to throw all of that out the window for the most part and just read a story naturally. When any of the Bizarro people are like, we hate you, we want you to leave, it does seem, unless Jason Aaron comes out in the next issue and lets us in on this little factoid, this is a weird issue to read, because you're trying to figure out the story as you go along with the people of what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm telling you, some of this, it does kind of go in and out of point, but it does for the most part, like you said, because when you're first going, you don't know the lay of the land, and you're like, Superman, more like super fascist. What does that mean then? I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, wait, no, it's super fascist. And then he says, this is a madhouse. And then the one best part is when he actually says, I forget what it is. It's like, this is wrong, or whatever. And they're like, don't you give us that, flowery talk. That was pretty funny, the way that they heard that. I will get to it. The one thing that works, though,
in here, even some of the stuff, though, is like you have words in word balloons that are bold, where you think, like we talked about previously, these are the things that you switch around. But when you have Bizarro Lois immediately, isn't it the ugliest thing you've ever seen? You must be so proud. I'm like, that doesn't work. Because why would he would not be proud because Bizarro is the opposite. I don't know what I'm trying to play with this.
I wanted her to go, "Hey, Largeville." Like, that go there.
Really?
What I also like, though,
bad butt.
That's all I want. That's all I want. Bad butt. You end up where one of the things that I like, and it works. And at first I thought, oh, what? Like, I understand. Oh, everybody turns into Bizarros. And he's trying to make it a Bizarro world. And then all of a sudden, the firemen, they have, pretty much flamethrowers. And I'm like, the hell they get? Oh, wait a minute. It is a spell. And that's the only, if there wasn't that magic, I would have been like, how the hell they get flamethrowers just because they're Bizarros? But it works because of the magic, turning a lot of the things into it. And we had fun even before we read the full issue after our Patreon Spotlight, where we just saw that beginning and they're talking about, hey, the pilots, they end up making the passengers fly the thing. That's fun. It is that fun opposite
the thing is, you
deal.
set up a lot of stuff in the beginning with the idea of somebody committing suicide because everybody laughs at him in his mind, and then they all start laughing at him. So and then as he turns into Bizarro, he jumps off the bridge. You have all of this catastrophe going all over Metropolis. I'm like, oh my God, you have raised the stakes so completely in this whole story. I'm like, how can we come back to this? But then when Superman does snap out of it, and maybe even the idea is this is a torment that Bizarro is actually doing magically to him to make him snap out to see this world that he doesn't belong in.
Maybe, but he does try to do it himself. It felt weird.
He immediately, though, goes and solves all these problems. And you'd want Superman to do that, obviously, but it also says, okay, nothing really bad happened here at all, which, it takes things down just a notch.
So what you're saying is that it reminds you of Everyone Loves Ivy, when all of a sudden everything went dead in the whole entire world, but nobody got hurt at all.
Fine. Yeah.
It does take it down a notch, but it's Superman, so you can go with it. And I do like when you have that opposite, like even the little thing where you have the crossing guard who's letting the kids go. But then even that when she said, and so that was like one of the first things that it threw me, like, oh man, you saved these kids, but they now they're going to grow up to be there. I'm like, is this bizarre? It was weird. It was a weird kind of jumping in. It kind of throws you out even without it being full up Bizarro talk. But like you said, Lois at points jumps in and out. But some of the things are funny when she says to Superman, "Divorce me, you hideous man. Divorce me all over again." That is pretty funny. And then he says no. And then she has to remind him, well, you're kind of saying yes to me. Like, she gets confused. At one point, she almost even snaps out of it when she realizes Clark and things and then has to go. And you have her burning books. The big play, though, in this to me is that...
And then Action Comics #1.
Yeah. And not much is going on overall, though. It's cool to see this. And then
we are putting Superman through his paces with this, though, because this takes place over a matter of weeks, where Superman is running himself ragged to try to save everybody. All the Bizarros are pretty much killing themselves or others, to the point where Metropolis is a quarantine zone. The Justice League are doing what they can. Batman's on the outskirts trying to figure out what to do. We have magical people coming in. Even Dr. Fate, though, didn't really expect Bizarro's map to be that powerful. Dr. Fate became a Bizarro, and other magic users have to do this. So right now we're kind of relying on
as that.
Batman on the outskirts. So did I. But you also have, Blue Devil and Constantine, here to the rescue. And I'm like, this is great. But then, because you never get to see Blue Devil do a goddamn thing. But all Blue Devil is here to do is give Constantine his lunch, and he seems happy with it.
It's so great because Constantine, it's almost, it's the same as get that guy's leg, get that guy's eyeball. But it's so funny because Constantine, he needs to do a counterspell. There's Blue Devil, and he says, all right, get me some whiskey, get me some cigarettes, get me a liver and onion sandwich extra. I need the extra liver. That's part of the counter. And I'm like, Blue Devil, you dummy. So with that, though, when we end up having that, I kind of hope that it isn't as large. And somehow it's the craziest spell we've ever had because it has to counteract a Bizarro spell. So, but it's funny. And if it's just his lunch, that's hilarious, too. Yeah. So you have that. Batman is trying to, keep in touch. He keeps saying, hey, what's going on? And Superman says, and I think that when he says my family, it felt weird because Lois is already there, but he means the Superman family because he doesn't want them infected. But then the quarantine kind of breaks through and they head to Gotham, and we have that Gotham Metropolis right next to each other play again, like we have talked, about and how they keep changing and whatnot. But you have Superman then doesn't know how much it is spread and he's upset. But then out of nowhere, Batman's very worried. Hey, are you okay? Have you slept? Have you done this? Are you sure that you're not Bizarro'd up? And he's like, no, I'm not. And then he looks in the mirror and sees a Bizarro, and it gets a little wonky in my mind.
Buddy.
Yeah, he's like,
not even fine. The idea of that, because with the magic and Bizarro of the mind going on, for one moment, it seemed like Superman became a Bizarro again in the storyline and started killing people left and right, only for this to be a whole thing of the mind that Bizarro was putting him through. And it's just like, it felt really weird to jump into this point where you don't realize what's happening because you don't know the extent of Bizarro magic at this point. So when you finally come to oh, that was a weird little take.
I
and then we go to a flashback.
Was kind of lame. I thought that was kind of a lame way to do it because you're taking advantage of the stuff, and it was kind of
agreed. And the thing is, though, like I'm sitting here reading, it's like, oh my god, I know he's bizarred up, but how does Superman come back from this? He just
me and you both
so
were thinking the
people.
same thing. I'm thinking to myself, can he get away with just saying he was Bizarro? Because this seems really bad. That was really bad. Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to? Oh, it was up there, and that felt cheap. It felt very cheap to me. Usually you'll start an issue like that or end a clip, but right in the middle, out of nowhere, you get that without any sort of really in or out of it, and it felt like a cheap play to make you just like, oh my god, because like I said, not a ton is happening, but I'm interested in a lot of the stuff that's happening. It's just, I want to get to the next issue. But
that's the thing, and the book looks great that's going on.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's like pretty much the Omega Man with Superman, trying to keep things under control with a bunch of mutants running around, telling him how much he hated him and spitting in his face. To the point when we have a flashback, though, where Bizarro's like, look, how does this feel, buddy? You know, the idea that you're the most despised man there is. But, in Bizarro talk. But when you have this, you see weeks earlier when to a flashback where Bizarro first comes to Metropolis, like for the beginning of the story, it seems like, but it still feels out of place where he first comes here and everybody's like, oh my god, it's that stupid ass Bizarro. How is he even a Superman?
Bizarro.
They are talking so much shit for a guy who's essentially a Superman villain who looks like Superman with Superman powers. I'm like, you guys are taking your lives in your hands really risky in this, and as far as I'm concerned. But it just leads to Bizarro crying as he goes away. He's upset that everybody hates him and thinks it's a goddamn joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does this take place there to the point where, like, this is where he decides, like, is he magicked up yet at this point? Did he then go off the planet?
Yeah, that's weird.
It feels like a weird little change here, but this is what he's essentially putting Superman through now with what he experienced when he first came to Metropolis for help because his planet is lost in the multiverse.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the first issue. You did have that play, and even me and you just talking that I said, I think this is kind of neat because a lot of people, they do think Bizarro's a joke. You don't. We talked about this the last time we talked about, Action Comics. You like Bizarro because he's one of his bigger villains. It doesn't matter, you think he's a slow Superman. But one of the things about him is that makes him dangerous. That it's like, yeah, and he could go toe to toe. It doesn't matter if he's a little slower, he says things backward. He still is a Superman. He's strong as hell.
He drives me nuts with Bizarro talk, but he's upper echelon Superman villains as far as I'm concerned. Even the idea of Mr. Mixel Splitlick. I hate saying that damn name. The idea of this fifth dimensional, he has unlimited power until he make his ass say Coat Tipsy's him. I think that's stupid as shit, but he's still one of the top tier Superman villains.
And just because he's goofy doesn't mean he can't just wink out everybody with a thought. He doesn't, maybe because he's goofy, but it is crazy. And here's, again, normally, I would end up saying, oh, here we go again, trying to make a sympathetic, but Bizarro is always sympathetic, even if he is a big...
Except for when it seemed like he was beating on his family, but I think it was around death metal at time.
Yeah, but he was just loving them, Eric. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
And that was a hug, or he was telling them a message. So you end up all this going on, and it just... I don't mind the idea that, okay, he's upset, this is going to have to... Because you're not ever going to, Superman's not going to throw Bizarro in the sun. He's going to have to try to work this out. And what'll probably happen is Superman will try to help him or whatever to get the actual Bizarro world back, which is fine because at the end, Bizarro, he's a threat, but he's a threat. It's weird. He's not he's not evil. He just does opposite. So when he comes and he does he's like a Frankenstein. He didn't want to hurt the girl, Eric, right?
He's got an abnormal brain, so who knows what he actually wanted to do with the whole thing. But you have a 4-issue series now. And pretty much it feels like Jason Aaron with this series we've seen Bizarro do more damage than any other Superman villain in a long time, it feels like, with the amount of the plot that we're actually I'm reading right now. So I'm like, this is crazy to me. And not only that, it's spreading. We have everything on the outskirts spreading out in all directions where it's continuing to turn people into Bizarros where nobody can contain this shit. Bizarro has become the biggest threat in the longest time of Superman. You can say World War this and all the other Sister Shadow. I don't know who's going to say Sister Shadow, but you can. But this
Sister
is the real
Shadow.
threat as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen this much damage in a threat since Rogo Zar. You know what I'm saying there? So when you have all this, though, I did see some people, and this is where, again, people start to tie things. Oh, why are we doing this when in the Batman book we end up going to the future? Or that? I'm like, what are you doing? Don't try to play. Yeah, they're like, no, this is just the same as the Joker zombie apocalypse in the future. I'm like, why are you jumping to these things to not like just have fun with this? And it is a kind of a cool play what Jason Aaron's doing because, again, Bizarro, a lot of people look at him as a goof, as a joke, and this isn't a joke. I mean, this isn't a joke. The shit that's going on.
It's not only a joke, but it's also a different Bizarro than you've ever seen before, which is interesting.
And really, magicked up, and that's where you do get Constantine and Blue Devil, and that's I'm waiting for more of that because this is now Superman Superstars, the Action Comics, and when you see that pop up, when you see Constantine and Blue Devil, and they even mention Zatanna and Xanadu, and Xanadu we'll talk about later.
And Dr. Fate.
And Dr. Fate. It starts to feel like we could get that, that little feeling that we have in the world's finest. And we like that. And
anybody can be here.
What I really do like in this, where, again, I just said, don't worry about other books or whatever, but one of the things a lot of people also say, oh, if this was happening in Metropolis, Batman would definitely get involved. And usually you have the opposite. Man, Batman's in trouble. I like that Batman is involved, and then it spreads. He's trying to help.
And even the idea
outside
that
the deal.
He's Batman. He knows he has to stay on the outside because everybody's getting infected. And if you want to go along the lines of saying, the Joker Year 1 story, where it's the whole idea that everybody's been taken over by the Joker, you got to remain sane in this whole thing. You can't let yourself get infected no matter what because all hope is lost. You can't do anybody any good. So Batman staying on the outskirts of this makes complete sense for the character because he's doing what he can without getting his ass all freaking Bizarro'd up. So we don't need Bat-Zarro running around, do we?
Yes, no. We do. Yeah, we do. So you have all this going on. I'm telling you, when he starts freaking out and then he just boom, these people. And then I'm thinking, is he just giving it a little tan? Like, oh, no, the chopper. And he just rips it apart. I'm like, what the fuck? And then you so this is the weird play, though, when you end up where I'm sitting there, what are you doing, Jason Aaron? Because that seems real cheap, like I said. And it doesn't work in the idea of, oh, I get it. Opposite. It's like, it's up the mind. Stop it. It's nonsense. And so when that happens, where you said Lois is the main Bizarro talk, divorce me again.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, she's like, get out of town, jerk. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? But she starts breaking out of it because he says, I'm not going anywhere, Miss Lane, which then she must be like, oh, thank God he's leaving. That show. But then she says, go away, Superman. No, wait, come back. Clark, who's Clark? Go away, Superman. I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking. It's just going on in her mind and kind of swirling around. But is it wearing off? Is it the love of a good man? Is it? I don't know. Look,
I'm also concerned at this point with the idea that this is a magic spell that even Bizarro didn't seem to fully understand what he was doing, just doing it to achieve his goals. This could just be a whammy on Superman where he's witnessing this all of the mind, and he's actually, nothing of this is actually happening.
Well, remember, I said, and I think I was talking to Zach about it a bit more. In my mind, I thought the cool play would be that Superman's like, oh my God, it's Bizarro world, Bizarro but it was that everybody was regular and he was Bizarro. He was just seeing opposite, which would be all crazy. And that I kind of got that feel by the end of the idea of him seeing weird deals and maybe being manipulated. There's a lot going on to get to where we are, where we're just kind of where we are. I mean, we saw Bizarro World. We get to see what that is. But then we have to move on and see how we can solve it. We have Constantine.
But you lead to a very interesting place to this whole idea because by the time this is all said and done, Superman leaves Metropolis and just hopes that everybody doesn't kill each other while he's gone because he does need help. But he realizes this whole thing is spread way farther than he ever realized because even with that, his powers are acting wonky. He can't see and hear as much as he used to with the idea because Bizarro is the spell work is working against him. But he goes to Metropolis with the one Hail Mary idea because if the world turned upside down, who's going to be the sanest man alive who can help me get out of this cell? The Joker. And the Joker in this world, with all the magic going on, has become the sanest man on Bizarro World. And he's all about helping. The man's even holding an umbrella in the rain. You know he's safe. He is.
I think at the end, we get that classic, okay, now I'll save you from being Bizarro. Oh shit, he was never Bizarro. And if you do, and he's having
the
fun.
5 Jokers.
And you know why you could do that? because you can't tell if his skin's changed because he's already that white skin. And I think that's what he's doing. I think that's the play. I think at the end it's going to be, hey, I'll change you back. Oh, I was never changed. I was just having fun. Waka waka. And then he runs away. Waka waka. When you have that, though, it is really cool. That at the end, I didn't expect it. But again, that's, the all-stars kind of feel of it. And we don't know where's Batman. Is he done? And also, it does feel like you have Constantine and Blue Devil. Like, they don't seem that concerned with turning. So their magic, they seem to have at least like their idea of how they can maybe counteract them not
hopefully
Bizarros. Now,
didn't work for Dr. Fate, but hopefully they got this under control.
I wanted to that's the thing I want to ask you, and a lot of times you'll think of opposite, hey, if you love, say hate, but sometimes it's not that clear or whatever. I mean, does Dr. Fate become Dr. Hate, Eric does, or does he become an agent of chaos? But they probably wouldn't want him. There's a lot of weird things with Dr. Fate that I would have liked to have seen.
I think he would want to be an agent of chaos in a Bizarro form, but I don't think he'd understand how to do it, so it wouldn't matter anyway.
I think that it'd be kind of funny, where it's almost like
I think he would do some magical thing, and he'd just end up making s'mores in front of a fire.
I wanted to see it. That's what I wanted to see, because I don't think he's full out, chaos, agent of chaos. It would be him wanting to be and trying to think of what that would be. It's kind of funny. Also, I think that we solved everything that I've always asked, because in this, as a Bizarro, Bibbo is not picking up kids. That means that normally he's sus, right? That's what it shows me. I like that he's sitting there, him and his wild bunch there, and watching, and on the TV, don't look up. And that was when I actually thought, it's like, okay, is it don't look up or is the opposite look down? This is the shit that drives me nuts. But that was kind of funny, where Superman
it is
on
a
the thing
problem,
that says,
but I was
able
to. But the idea where I could take, this is something that Bizarro is doing to Superman to make him look like the pariah that, Bizarro feels like the entire time. He's created a Bizarro world where you don't have to follow all of Bizarro rules, because you're just trying to get a point across that you can understand. Because again, it drives you nuts trying to follow along with what you think are Bizarro rules, but by the end of the day, you really don't want to follow Bizarro rules because it's going to drive you nuts.
I mean, you have the simple thing of like, hey, I got to go do this. And then you're like, well, do they not have to do it? Or are they going to do something? It gets so wonky. And
like I said, I'm trying to go at the idea that I can allow myself to understand what's going on through the point of views that we've got in the story. But I don't know that to be the case. So it is a detriment to this issue, because I'm making up my own rules to try to satiate my curiosity for why this is going on this way, because it's not how it normally should be. Because normally it'll make me insane and I won't want to read it anymore, but I'm still enjoying reading because it's not over the top.
Yeah, and like Lois is burning the books, like you said, action, all that, and we burn these books for freedom. Okay, yep, for knowledge. We fight fascism outside. We do this in the name of the... Oh, what happened there? Like, what are you doing? Are you not doing it? Because she is doing opposite, but then isn't, and then just says, here in Metropolis, all are free to be Bizarro. Well, they're
it's
not.
Always a problem.
And I'm like, it is. It really is. And I don't know. I expect and I actually sat there. I'm like, what would my rules be? And then I'm thinking, well, maybe when people get real excited, that's when it comes. But that's not always the case. And emotional, that's not really the case. And I almost want to come up with a set of rules, and that what I would do at the beginning, I'd have Johnny DC come out and explain a little chalkboard. Here's what it is, fellas. Yeah. But it just, you go with it. And I think that what you end up having here, you might agree, a lot of the jokes are going to be from the opposite deal, but when you need to give information, just tell it normally and let's go with it. That seems to be,
like, we need to get to a point, though, like the idea when you have different languages and different things are spelled out in different, like, fonts of colors and stuff. Maybe we need that for Bizarro as well. So when you know it's supposed to be opposite, here you go. Here's the little clue. Here's a little ding sound.
I really want to, I want to come up with some, Jeff Johns-esque way to explain why certain times, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out. I do think
I'm just going with magic.
I think that one thing here, though, I don't often know who the mayor of Metropolis is, what's going on, but they might want to look into slightly better gun control. There are people with assault rifles out of nowhere. You just end up a teenager. He walks out. He's got 3 AKs shooting, rootin' tootin'. When he grabs all those guns, there's way too many guns. I mean,
not for a city.
I thought that, he's just there at the plaza. I mean, he's just there where they're spray painting shit on the big statue. I did feel bad for Bizarro, though, and it reminded me of the flowers for Bizarro that I always bring up by Christos Gage, where he was able to not be Bizarro, but then when he started reverting, he was so sad because, again, people look at him as a joke. And he said, I'm not dumb. I'm not a joke. It's just that's how it comes out because of that. Almost like a speech impediment or a little bit of a, not even it's more like like dyslexia. Like he's not, he is a very interesting character. It's just when he shows up, nonsense follows with the Bizarro
and that's
talk. So.
Usually why I like to stick with the clone Bizarro.
And that's the thing. The clone, though, to me, I like the fun of the Bizarro world Bizarro. The clone has his own little things to be upset about, and it just kind of brings me down. It's wacky. It's wacky. But what would you give this?
Ultimately, I think this is like lesser in my mind than the previous issue because I was full of wonder what we had going on there with the magic involved. I was all about seeing the city of Bizarro take place, and we did get to see that. It's just not as exciting as I want it to be because it takes place over a course of weeks where Superman's running himself ragged, just trying to make sure that people don't kill each other, and it's fine, but it just didn't get to the points that I wanted to be, and the idea where I spent most of the issue reading it, trying to wonder what the rules are with Bizarro speech, took me out of the issue a little bit, which is actually crazy to me for the idea that I'm thinking of other things while trying to understand an Action Comics issue. But I still like where we're going with this because it's still a different kind of story with a different kind of Bizarro than we've ever seen before, and I still think it's interesting, especially with Superman teaming up with a Bizarro Joker, who's the sanest man in the world at this point in time. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, but it's not on the pedestal that I thought it like the first issue was in the story.
I'm a 7 out of 10 as well. And you know what's cool, though, is, I was wary of Jason Aaron coming over to DC. Obviously, this is probably my least favorite issue that he's done so far, and I still like it. That's what I like about the whole play, is that this might be, I think, but it also is, it feels like a transition issue. He wants to show Bizarro World that is dominating this, so we'll get back to like real cool stuff with the Joker. But still, if your worst issue you've had is a 7, I'll take that any day.
Weird science
is the revolution.